Jarrett Stidham, welcome to the Big 12 race. You passed the opening exam. Corey Coleman takes aim on the Big 12 record book. Trevon Boykin, say goodbye to the Heisman. Oklahoma State, say hello to national attention. OU Baylor, the next 3 weeks are about to get crazy. This is Big 12 Breakdown. This is the best we can do in covering Big 12 football each and every Wednesday night for one full half hour, plus with some of the best bloggers in the Big 12, including this week Sean Cordy of Today's U, and also, of course, Mr. Robert Wetzel of Cowboys Ride for Free, riding high this week after the huge win against those TCU Horned Frogs. That was a stunner for me, I've got to admit, Robert. It was a 5-point spread according to Vegas, and I said right here on this show, and I'm not throwing out predictions all over the place, that TCU was going to win it by at least 17 points. So you're mighty happy I'm wrong. What can you say about that Cowboys performance?
I think there was a level at which I think some OSU people were a little surprised just because the offense came out, and I was not expecting them to just score points really almost at will so quickly. And as I watched that happen, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, what is Baylor going to do to TCU if that's what OSU's doing to them? But at the same time, OSU's defense. I go back to the points per possession stats, and Oklahoma State's defense had as good or better a performance than Alabama's defense. You start looking at those numbers, and it just really, I was really amazed. I thought it was impressive. So, look, we're excited, but now we're all trying not to relive the horror of 2011 as we travel to Ames undefeated. So, you know what? That was great. If we survive Ames, then I can talk to Sean about what we're going to do to Baylor when they come to Stillwater.
Okay, Robert, let's relish just for a few more minutes in this, because the 49 points didn't surprise me. It's what you just talked about. It's the 4 interceptions on Boykin. It's the 29 points. So giving up 29 points to an upper echelon Big 12 team is a statement. To give up 29 points to TCU and only have a handful of those points given up while the game was still competitive, that was crazy. So Oklahoma State's defense, what do you have to say about the Cowboys on defense? What are we missing here?
Well, I think what we're missing, what was talked about earlier in the year, that we're just now seeing this, it's the depth. Gundy's talked about this a couple of times this season, where a couple of years ago, at least 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, they switched their recruiting philosophy. They took 3 scholarships away from the offensive side of the ball and put them towards the defensive side of the ball. And the main reason wasn't necessarily try to go get that high 5-star guy. It was to just get more decent guys in there, so that what happens over the course of a game in the Big Ten, OSU's defense faced 110 plays in this game. You can't do that running your ones out there all day. You have to be at least 2 deep, and in some cases, in many cases, 3 deep across a lot of your positions, because when you look at this, what happened was you had Jimmy Bean, who was putting in an all-conference year at defensive end. He goes down with a season-ending knee injury prior, from the Texas Tech, and then during the week in practice, he goes down with a season-ending knee injury opposite Emmanuel Ogbah. Well, they just rolled a couple other guys in there, and Ogbah, I don't think, had a sack, but these other guys did. And Chad Whitener, who came in for Ryan Simmons, who was an all Big 12, linebacker. And Chad Whitener, it's like he hasn't even skipped a beat. The linebackers haven't even missed a beat. Kevin Peterson, who's been a little banged up. Ashton Lampkin, who's been a little banged up at corner. Those good. McTavish Jones, backups. Michael Hunter, a transfer from Indiana, graduate transfer. So the depth is just on the defensive side of the ball it's ridiculous, and it has definitely come into play for the Cowboys now. And we saw it. I think we saw it in spades on Saturday against TCU.
Hey, Sean, we've heard about Jarrett Stidham coming out of high school as a five-star recruit, a top-rated quarterback. We also have seen him perform in garbage time against lesser opponents and even against the better opponents as well, but when it was non-competitive football. So finally, he gets the start. He performs well. It was a tough game, though, against K-State. The Wildcats actually had the ball, only down a score late in the fourth quarter. So your assessment of Baylor's performance, starting with Stidham and looking across the field, both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, first I'm just going to preface, I am trying to do this on my phone now. My internet's going weird, so if I cut out, forgive me. But yeah, Baylor, like I said last week, I was kind of concerned that it would be a closer game than most people expected. 7 points, as this score evidences that. It was a little bit of a struggle, but not Stidham's fault at all. I mean, he passed for over 400 yards, 5 total touchdowns. That's unheard of. Seth Russell hadn't even had over 400 yards in a game yet. And he also continued Corey Coleman's 2-touchdown streak, putting him at 20 touchdowns on the season. So, I mean, the offense is running so efficiently. The only thing that I think the college football playoffs are knocking them for is not scoring 60 like they were expected to. And you have to look at the game tape that Kansas State just knew how to control the ball. One of their drives, their first drive, took like
9 minutes.
Thanks for filling in.
It took like 9. I can tell you this, J.W. Walsh is going to start for Oklahoma State against Baylor. And I'm sure Bill Snyder's probably going to be consulted
I know,
on the game plan.
Yeah, I know the Cowboys, they struggle on the run, so it's probably going to be back and forth ping pong right there. But that's what Kansas State exposed, that if you can keep Baylor off the field like SMU did earlier in the season during the first half of the opener, that there's a good chance that you can at least be competitive.
So Oklahoma State makes maybe the biggest statement of any team in the country, and Baylor holds serve against Kansas State, wins in a difficult place to play, although the score wasn't impressive. Sean explains some of the reasoning there. So your take, Robert, on the college football playoff release. TCU obviously plummets to 15. Baylor takes over at 6. Oklahoma State makes the big jump from 14 up to 8.
So
here we go.
You could sit there and you could debate who's up, who's down. We have the BC. This is the BCS plus 2 teams minus the computers. And by the way, the computers are running algorithms designed by humans. So you've really just got a more pure human element involved in this, and we've added 2 teams to the mix. So I wrote about this on Cowboys Right for Free this week. As long as you have humans involved, there's going to be human bias. There are people on the committee, they have preferences in styles of play, that they like this better than that. You've got people who are not fans of more modern metrics and judging, defensive statistics and such. So it's really, look, what do you expect? You've got a room full of human beings arguing over, who thinks who is better than who and who has the quality loss, but maybe we're not talking about quality losses. And the only hope, this is my only hope, is that actually what has happened is that the powers that be at ESPN, Fox, CBS, all the networks are like, oh my God, we really whiffed. This was a mistake. We should have gone right for 8 teams. But how do we do this? We can't do this. Well, you know what? Listen. You guys need to start coming out with the most ridiculous reasons why you move teams up or down in this ranking. This needs to be bizarre. Stir up the fan bases. Get them crazy, because then if the groundswell, the public cry is so great, we're going to be able to come back to the schools and the conferences and say, guys, the public is behind this. There's even more money there. Let's go to 8 teams now. Let's not wait 5 years till the contract's over. Let's go to 8 teams now. And I think Texas would agree, that they probably also talked to the officials in the Big 12 who said, hey, Oklahoma State bit the bullet for the BCS back in 2011 to kill the BCS. Why not let Oklahoma State, win a couple of games and get up in the conversation again, and then we'll dash their dreams, and then everybody will be pissed off, and we'll go from 4 teams to 8 teams. So that's the only logic I can apply to this. It's a group of humans, Mark. It's a group of humans. They're going to make their decisions. There's going to be biases, and I think, the conspiracy talk is I don't like conspiracy because we talked about this before, that I think that means there are actually people sitting down there agreeing to cut out one guy. And I just think there's human bias involved. There's obviously bias involved against the Big 12. It's obvious. There's a little bias involved against the Pac-12 maybe. Who knows? But there's definitely human bias in that people on the committee have preferences in who they think's good, who's not good. And what do you expect? We're going to get rankings that, they come out. If Oklahoma State had jumped, think about this. If Oklahoma State had jumped from 14 in the first ranking all the way to 4 in the playoff, imagine all the cries from like Iowa people and Notre Dame people and whoever. So it doesn't matter. Everybody's going to be hacked off until this thing goes to 8 teams, where you have a guaranteed spot for each Power 5 champion. Guaranteed spot, so now you're not making any choice there. Let the committee figure out who the other 3 teams are, because if Bama gets picked on, the spot. If you look tough, give them a spot. Honest to goodness, it's until they get to where each Power 5 conference is guaranteed a spot in a playoff, this thing's going to be a big argument every year, every week.
Okay, got to let Sean talk here and get his 2 cents in. So my one take in this from that is that you think that there's bias. Of course there's bias because there's humans involved. So you don't think it's an agenda-driven bias. You just think it's natural bias. I
just think it's natural bias. I think you've got a lot of people on the committee that maybe enjoy old school football more than the high flying speed offenses. So, and they it's just human bias. It's what it is.
And my grand statement in this is, taking the Big 12 as an example, you had 2 legitimate non-conference games. So these teams and these conferences play in silos, so they can't be judged and compared against other conferences and teams in other conferences viably. You need to allow all the conference champions in. So what do you think initially about the ranking specific to this week, Sean? Or if you've got a rant similar to Robert's, let her fly.
Yeah, I think he actually hit it on the head. He took most of my thunder. I'm just going to back him up a little bit here. And this is also looking at someone else that has a bias. Joe Klatt at Fox. Obviously, he played Big 12 football.
Uh-oh.
Sean's struggling with his internet a little bit. But, yeah, Joe Klatt's been all over Twitter with his stuff. He was on Colin Cowherd, spouting off a lot of statistics. And, I just think it goes to the point. Is he back?
Yeah, I think I'm back. My internet's being terrible right now. But he put out that the committee definitely favors a pro-style offense, comparing versus the AP poll. 57% of teams are ranked higher in the committee's rankings compared to the AP, and then teams like Baylor are ranked lower. Spread tempo offenses are 73% of times ranked lower. So that's a pretty incredible stat. It's not a bias that they're specifically trying to narrow down and throw out Big 12 teams like that. I mean, the Big 12 has 4 of the top 5 scoring offenses in the nation. So they're saying that they don't have defense that can stop some of these teams they have in the top 4, like a Clemson or Notre Dame. But then you also look, someone else threw a stat out. They compared the Oklahoma State TCU game versus the Alabama LSU game. And it was about a 1% difference between the points per drive. I think it was about 2.3, and it was just about give or take. It was the same game, just at a faster pace. So these defenses are playing at the same rate, just a lot faster than teams in the SEC or the Big Ten might.
Well, I can't argue with the metrics because it's math that can't be argued, but I would have a hard time believing that the Big 12 is playing as good a defense as the upper echelon of the SEC. That's difficult for me to take. I don't know, Robert, if that can be really defended. It's just that, again, the Big 12, every conference has a small sample size against the other conferences, and especially the Big 12 this year did not, for me, schedule enough difficult games when you look at Baylor and Oklahoma State for me to make a judgment versus those teams. But to Robert's point, I'll use, and this could be done in a number of ways, for some, I hear the same analysts contradicting themselves. Well, they will use the transitive property to compare teams on one hand, but then they'll shy away from using it for other teams. So, for example, we could still make an argument that Memphis is better than Alabama because Memphis beat Ole Miss and Ole Miss beat Alabama. But, of course, that doesn't apply to Alabama. It applies to other teams. We will make that argument for other teams. I have heard from the same analyst multiple times from different analysts that Northwestern is a good win for Iowa, but it's a bad loss for Stanford. So, man, you lost to Northwestern. That's horrible, Stanford. But Iowa beat Northwestern. That's a good win for Iowa. So,
right.
The arguments can be made all over the place.
That's been going on forever. I mean, you can look at like one-loss teams, and I'll use Oklahoma State from 2011 losing to Iowa State.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry, but I mean, you can go.
Uh-oh.
Good. See, that broke him.
Yeah, he didn't need to go in that direction.
And let me tell you something. I want to hop on his comment till he gets back on. That I think that loss in 2011. That's another thing that I kind of hop on with. You know, why does a late season loss matter more than an early season loss? I mean, a loss is a loss, especially if you're playing non-conference and you go Power 5 in your non-conference. And you lose in your non-conference of Power 5. What, to me, it's like, and when they try to give, you know, I heard somebody rationalizing Alabama's loss to Ole Miss as a complete fluke. Look at the turnovers. Look at the play Ole Miss scored on with the ball ricochets off somebody's helmet, you know, whatever. Well, then rationalize Oklahoma State's loss in 2011. You had a football team that just came out and played a game when they had the opportunity to not play the game, actually. The night after the death of a beloved, you know, member of their athletic department. I mean, a tragedy at the school. You don't want to give that some type of, you know, okay, well, you know what, let's cut them some slack. So in those moments, those late losses, you say, hey, they lost, so that hurts. Well, either a loss hurts or it doesn't hurt. And if a loss is bad, then you can look at, well, who did they lose to? And to heck with the time of year. So that, to me, again, just goes to the human element is always going to cause this to be turmoil. It is going to be turmoil until they go to at least 8 teams so that you can guarantee your Power 5 conference champs a spot.
That will be the one defense I'll make for the committee, is that you have different people bringing different values to different metrics or non-metrics. So you have some people that say, I'm looking more toward the team that's playing well down the stretch, so I'm going to value a loss greater in week 13 than in week 1. I don't agree with that either. I think it's a resume and it's a track record, and every game should count equally. But then you have other people that go to the metrics, others to the eye test. I think that it should be based on, well, I would come up with a completely objective system, much like the NFL, and I would balance out the scheduling. So, Sean, you've waited patiently here.
Yeah, I've waited patiently because my internet's being crazy right now, so kind of miss what's going on right here. So I don't have too much to add. I mean, Robert and I are on the same skit. We're rolling right now. I totally agree with what he's saying.
Okay, I'll let you know how I rank these teams, and then I'll give you my top 10, and I'll let you guys react, and then we can dive into this week's games. So this is what I've got right here. Top 10, Stanford 10, Notre Dame 9, Florida 8, LSU 7, Alabama 6, people hate me, Baylor 5, Ohio State 4, Oklahoma State 3, Iowa 2, Clemson 1. I'm basing that on nothing but track record. I'm not saying Do you think that I think Iowa's the second best team in the country? No, I don't. But I would rank them number 2 based on track record right now. And I think that they have 3 quality wins while Oklahoma State has the big win. So I'm favoring that slightly over the Oklahoma State big TCU win with Northwestern, Duke, and Penn State for Iowa. So I'm basing that strictly on I believe that a team should go way down the rankings if they've lost a game. Do I think Alabama's the 6th best team in the country? No, I personally think that they're probably better than that, but they haven't earned it on the field. They have lost a game, so they need to be ranked below teams that have no losses. And if those teams are truly not that good, they will lose a game. And until they lose a game, I'm going to keep them up in the top 5.
That Oklahoma State is in your playoff, so I have to me it's get in the dance. If you're dancing, you got a chance. I have no problem with that. And you've got Baylor high enough, and I could see the argument. Okay, Baylor doesn't have the marquee win yet, but that changes this week.
Yes,
absolutely. So I mean, to me, as a ranked team that's undefeated, you need to be close enough to the top 4 that you could reasonably say, if I get 1 or 2 more key wins, I'm going to get in. And, if you've got a Power 5, I'm telling you right now, if you've got a Power 5 conference champ, and I'm looking at Baylor and I'm looking at Oklahoma State that are sitting there undefeated, if they aren't in the playoff, then I've washed my hands of that.
They're talking about, I've heard scenarios where, the Big 12 would be left out as an undefeated champion, and also the Big 10 if it was Iowa. Why Iowa gets singled out and not somebody else winning the Big 10? And they're even making the statements that if Iowa faces an undefeated Ohio State team, okay, we're going to legitimize their Big 10 championship and they get to the playoff. But if Ohio State stumbles before that but still gets to the Big 10 title game, well, you beat a one-loss team, and even though you're undefeated, Iowa, sorry, you get left out. So the Big 12/Iowa seem to be getting gypped in this whole scenario based on perception.
Well, I don't know about you, but we're actually getting to see 2 Seans here. This is impressive.
He is all over the place.
Yeah, Mark Rogers TV
and the one is a bit more animated.
Yeah.
So, Sean, you're going to have to make your comments quick on these games as we roll through them. But we have the huge one that we have to talk about. We've got Oklahoma and Baylor, Sean. We haven't talked any Sooners in this show yet, but you've got to talk up the Sooners for us.
Oh, yeah, the Sooners, gosh, they've really figured out what happened. I think, honestly, the best thing that could have happened to them, maybe not the best, but losing to Texas put a spur in their butt. They figured out something to do. I mean, they followed that up with a 55-point win over Kansas State. And, I mean, look, Baylor just beat them by 7 points. So this is a team that's finally figured out how to run. And I just lost again.
No, we got you.
We got you.
Nope, he lost it on his end.
You knew it.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, Robert, on this Oklahoma-Baylor game with OU, despite one of the worst losses in the country for a contending team, still getting credit for a pretty strong schedule to date at 12th in the college football rankings?
Well, I'd say offensively, nobody's hotter. And if there's somebody hotter offensively than Oklahoma State right now in the last couple of games, it's OU. I think it's going to be very interesting because OU's the top defense in the conference, going down to Waco, where the last few years have not been nice to OU down in Waco. And it's just going to be very, very interesting to see if as I told a very good friend of mine who's a Sooner, I said, I hate to tell you this, but I'm rooting for OU just because I want Bedlam to be for all the marbles. And, I think he's good. And please don't go down to Waco and take a Texas-sized dump in your diaper down there. I mean.
All right, Sean. Baylor and OU. Baylor's really had Oklahoma's numbers in recent years. What is the cautionary tale for the Bears in dealing with OU? Where do you think the matchup could favor Oklahoma?
I think the matchup's going to favor the Sooners, definitely being able to match them drive for drive. If there's any team other than Oklahoma State that can match Baylor's run game and their pass game, it's going to be Oklahoma. I mean, you got Baker Mayfield running on all cylinders right now. Pirine and Mixon are looking like the best duo in the conference right now. So if they can figure out a way that have their two players are.
Uh-oh. There we go. Robert.
I'll continue his comments. I think if they find a way to have success in the secondary, besides Mixon catching passes out of the backfield has been very effective for them. Mayfield does use his legs well. So I think if they can complement that offensively, they'll be good. My biggest thing in that game is going to be OU's defense, #1 defense in the conference against Baylor's offense.
Hey, Robert, with Oklahoma State going to Iowa State, other than 2011 and the history involved, do you have any reservations about this game?
Okay, so it's impossible not to have reservations because I'm an old school OSU fan and I believe in the mythical Squinky. So anything can happen. But honestly, it's our sports devil. It's Oklahoma State's imaginary sports devil that causes all kinds of havoc. If you Google it, go Google it. You'll find out about it. So anyway, I think for people that I did a hangout with one of the writers, Kyle Fredrickson from the Daily Oklahoman, about the game last night a little bit, and I think the biggest thing about this game where people are saying, oh my gosh, here they go, they're undefeated, going to Ames, it's deja vu all over again. Well, really. It really doesn't bear, other than the record going into the game, any similarity because now you've got a couple of coaches and a few players, including J.W. Walsh, a key player who were there in 2011. They're not going to allow that same thing to happen again, and you can't replicate what the team dealt with emotionally from the plane crash prior to the game. I think since 2011, Oklahoma State has handled Iowa State no problem, whether it be in Stillwater or in Ames. They won easily 2 years ago in Ames. So OSU goes up there, takes care of the football. I think they win. They'll win handily by, I'd say, 3-4 touchdowns. Should.
Hey, Sean, I guess we're starting on our picks. We've got the Cowboys going up to Ames to take on the 3-6 Cyclones.
Yeah, I also want to point out, though, about the deja vu about 2011. There's also one more parallel. This isn't going to be anything big, but you also have Iowa State having a quarterback change like they did last time that the Cowboys went there in 2011. So,
Sean, I'm having a problem with this right now, Sean.
It's all right. I'm just playing conspiracy theory, but I'm still going to take Oklahoma State. I honestly think it's their best chance to lose just because they have the most to lose there. And you have TCU and Baylor coming to Stillwater, which is not TCU, Oklahoma. It's absolutely huge. So I'm going to go with Oklahoma State, though, to survive Ames.
Okay, guys, I think I know the answer because I think it's going to be the same as the answer I have. People are overreacting to TCU losing and killing TCU and saying they're done. It's up to Oklahoma State and Baylor and maybe Oklahoma at this point. TCU still alive, still viable here, taking on Kansas.
Yeah, and they'll win. So there you go.
Sean? Yeah.
That generated a lot of conversation right there, Mark.
Yeah, dead silence. But although that's pretty much what we've gotten from Sean all night, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think TCU handles them no problem.
All right, we got Texas taking on West Virginia. Again, the rest of the Big 12 has been kind of laid to the wayside, including these two. But it should be an entertaining game, should be a fairly close game with Texas taking on West Virginia. Sean says no.
It's going to be a sloppy game. That's what that's going to be. There's going to be a bunch of turnovers, or it could be completely boring, and we could just see a bunch of 3-and-outs. It's going to be. I think it's going to be low. I think it's going to be a low-scoring effort, but I'm going to take West Virginia.
All right, Robert, we got Texas going to Morgantown.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I agree with you. Oklahoma State's the only Big 12 team that's won in Morgantown this year. I think it stays that way.
Kansas State, Bill Snyder, they lose by a touchdown against Baylor. They lost all those heartbreaking games to start off the Big 12 season when it looked like, okay, they lost this one. They could give this team trouble. They could give this team trouble. And outside of that 55-0 embarrassment against OU, they've been competitive, but still 0-5 in the conference going to Texas Tech. So something's got to give here, Robert.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, Bill Snyder's probably playing the fourth quarter of the Oklahoma State-Texas Tech game on a continuous loop in his office, probably on a VCR tape, if I'm guessing, because Oklahoma State changed their philosophy, brought in J.W. Walsh, a running quarterback, and just shredded the Tech defense. You know, if Baylor thought they saw a lot of a running quarterback last week, Texas Tech's defense is it's just gonna be one running quarterback play after the other. Snyder's got like 52 of them he trots out there. Texas Tech's gonna have to have their wits about him here because Snyder's team they'll be prepared. And I don't know. Texas Tech's got to prove to me that they can get away from somebody other than Kansas and Iowa State.
Hey, Sean, if there's any team in the Big 12 that you can blame for the perception that there is absolutely no defense in the conference, it would be Texas Tech. Hosting Kansas State.
Yeah, I got to go. I'm going to go with Kansas State. They show that they can figure out how to control a team like Baylor, and Texas Tech is a lesser version of Baylor to some extent. Even though it's in Lubbock, I'm going to go with the Wildcats. And I have to add, I'm very surprised Bill Snyder did not write a thank you letter or a congratulations letter to Jarrett Stidham. I thought he would, but severely disappointed in that.
Yeah, he can only do that so often. You got to save those, maybe one per year. I don't know, and Boykin's going to be gone. So
Yeah.
Plenty of years to write Jarrett Stidham a congratulations note there. All right, Sean, let's line you up for the big one here. Oklahoma, people likening this team to Ohio State possibly, making that kind of run after a bad loss, but they have yet to do the heavy lifting to make that equation work. They're going to Waco. Oh, we lost Sean. Robert, we need you to pick up on the analysis.
Oh, there
I got
he is.
back.
Oh, all right,
Yep.
Sean.
Yep. So, I'm sorry, I lost the question. You can go to Robert.
Oklahoma, Baylor. It pretty much comes down to that.
Well, like I said, I'm rooting for OU because I want Bedlam to be kind of for the whole thing, kind of the whole enchilada at the end of the year. But as far as the game goes, OU's going to have to prove to me that they can, that they're not just kind of floating along here. And now when the big games come, they fold up because that's what they've been doing in the last few years. So I'm going to pick Baylor to win the game, even though I'm rooting for OU.
All right, it's the site of College Game Day, Sean. You got Oklahoma going to Baylor.
Oh, yeah. College game coming here. It's going to be fun. But before anything cuts out on me, I'm just going to go quick. I'm going to go Baylor. It's going to be hopefully not going to be raining. Forecast has been going up and down, but it's going to be another high-flying scoring attack from Baylor. It could be a blowout, I think. Baylor has like a 20-game win streak at home. No one leaves alive. It's going to be tough.
All right, we'll take it to the bank. And for as much as I have ranted against Big 12 football early in the season because of the awful games and the awful matchups, it is worth it now because we've got November and we've got 4 contending teams for a college football playoff spot. And, by the way, it still counts for me, the Big 12 championship.
Right.
I hate that the college football playoff has diminished the conference championship other than getting to the college football playoff. So for the Big 12 championship, we still have 4 viable, very exciting, very talented teams. And November is backloaded in the Big 12 like no other conference and is bringing us games like this. And it's going to get even more exciting, more intriguing the next few weeks.
I would say, Mark, Thanksgiving weekend, you think about this, that really almost no matter what happens, Thanksgiving Friday and Saturday will probably determine the Big 12 champion. Baylor at TCU on Friday and OU at Stillwater for Bedlam on Saturday. So it's almost regardless of what happens as we go in, at least one and maybe both of those games are going to have a direct bearing on who wins the Big 12.
Just so the Big 12 does not tie for first place. That's what all Big 12 fans are hoping.
We've got that all figured out. We have a whole tiebreaker that even I understand now. So,
all right. Glad that that is in place. All right, this is Big 12 Breakdown. We come your way every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Central and 9 o'clock on the East Coast. This week with Sean Cordy from Today's You and Robert Wetzel from Cowboys Ride for Free. Gentlemen, It's been a great discussion. Always appreciate the time.
Thank you.